No gold, no victory. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. What did I just mean just then? So, Sun Tzu, a often neglected part of his teachings is the importance of an economic base. Sun Tzu talks about the importance of money. Money, 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 money. Money is incredibly important in Sun Tzu's worldview. Why is this? So basically, he talks about how a war is expensive. It is expensive by its very nature, and that in order to maintain a standing army, you have two choices oftentimes. You can let the people prosper, and you can invest into the people, but in so doing, neglect the army. Or you can invest into the army, but in so doing, neglect the people. And so this is the choice that people often have to make. And what Sun Tzu talks about is the need to have wealth, to build wealth, to have enough money to essentially be able to do both. You need to be able to invest into your people, but you also need to be able to maintain military capabilities. And so, therefore, you have to essentially get working. That is what Sun Tzu talks about. You need to be a hustler when it comes to warfare. You need, as a kingdom, as a nation, whatever, you need to be ensuring that your economic base is firm, whereby, yes, you can constantly maintain a standing army at a high level of quality without compromise. But at the same time, you need to ensure that the people are not starving and so on and so forth. Now, again, this isn't a moral prescription that Mahatma Sun Tzu is making, because if you invest into the army but neglect the people, then the people rise up against you, and you now have a war on your hands. At the same time, though, if you neglect the army and invest solely into the people, then when warfare happens, that is his view, warfare is inevitable, you're going to be screwed. And so you, as a ruler, have the burden of doing both and doing both exceptionally well. That is his view. And so, therefore, you need hustle, public works, dams, things that increase the agricultural yield, infrastructure, a land value tax, a deregulation when it comes to the marketplace. All of these things are vitally important. You need to build wealth, and you cannot have enough. You need to build, 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 and constantly build wealth, attain more and more and more and more money. Because when the day comes that you go to war, your wallet essentially, your wealth, your economic base is how you are going to survive the war. You, during a war, in all likelihood, are not going to have the usual sources of revenue. So here's an example. Let's say you have a nation and they have their economy, right? Their normal economy. And then when they go to war, they have to cease production in farming, in uh, making watches. I don't know. Okay, let's just, work with me. We have a whole bunch of things that we use to hustle. Those all have to cease because we now have to go off and fight this war. Well, without having a large purse by which we can be sustained, then we lose the war. In fact, we have already lost the war before we even engaged in it. And so we need to have a large purse. Number one, to be able to do those two things simultaneously, invest into the people while maintaining a large army. That's number one. But number two, we need a large purse in order to be able to actually wage the war, survive the war, And third of all, we need a large purse in order to be able to recover from the war. Because those watches haven't been sold for X amount of time. Those bottles of milk that we usually sell haven't been sold for X amount of time. So we need to get back into the game and up productivity. And if we already have money in place to take care of that, then that makes that process faster and more feasible. We are not crippled by the war that we just fought. A prime example of an actor in history that didn't take into account the public purse when waging war would be perhaps the British Empire. Think about it. 2 world wars ended the British Empire. They went bankrupt. After World War II, they were no longer able to sustain this large empire they had built. And so therefore the British Empire ended, and it ended very quickly. And that is an example of what happens when you don't maintain a fat purse for this very situation where warfare, it will bankrupt you. It will rob you of your resources. You will starve. That's the other thing Sun Tzu talks about. The scarcity when it comes to warfare, using the example of winter, is the default. You're never going to have enough medicine. You're never going to have enough weapons, food, etc. And so you need to build those public stores. You need to build that wallet, that treasury. And no amount can ever be enough because you're entering into a zone where scarcity is the default setting. One way to think of it is like this. Warfare is a terrible, terrible thing that ought to be avoided at all costs, even though it is inevitable. And one of the reasons you ought to avoid it is because the moment one side fires their weapons, no matter how righteous you feel in that moment, you have now entered into a state of scarcity, into a season of winter in which survival is no longer certain.